I never expected to face discrimination until I discovered I was the owner of it all. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It wasn't just the spiraling whispers behind my back or the stares that pierced my skin like daggers. It was the moment I uncovered the truth. The truth that had been buried deep, tangled in my family's history. My whole life I'd believed I was just an ordinary person, but suddenly I was bombarded with the realization that I held the key to the very gates of oppression. It was a chilly Wednesday morning when I first stumbled upon the dusty archives in the attic. The damp smell of old paper filled the air. My fingers trembled as they brushed against the fragile pages of faded letters. Each stroke sent shivers through me. With every word, I unearthed stories of power looming over those less fortunate. My heart raced. I felt the weight of generations upon my shoulders. My great-grandfather's name glared at me, mixed with tales of wealth and privilege, unearthing his role as a silent puppet master. As I stared at the crumbling ink, my mind raced. I saw snapshots of the past. Shouts of anger, quiet tears, the laughter of children silenced. The ancestral lineage was more than blood. It was a legacy stained with discrimination. It boiled in my veins. Who was I to inherit such power when others suffered? I ached to understand how someone like me could descend from such shadows. Tom, are you okay? My best friend Ava's voice broke through the whirlwind of thoughts. Her brows knitted together with worry. My lips quivered. I couldn't answer right away. The fear of losing myself, losing her, clawed at my chest. Did you know? I finally whispered, the words escaping as if they carried the burden of the world. She knew my family was wealthy. But did she know the depths of what that wealth meant? Did anyone? The unanswered questions gnawed at me. The world felt like a tightly wound spring, ready to snap. Ava's eyes widened. What do you mean? The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I could almost hear my racing heartbeat, each thump reverberating through the wooden floor. Didn't they teach you anything? The intensity crackled, surrounding us in a bubble of tension. A part of me wanted to share everything, to expose the secrets that had shaped my identity. But another, deeper part screamed in fear. What if they wouldn't accept me? What if they turned away? As the shadows of doubt crept in, I had to choose. Would I expose the truth? Would I confront the pain of my inheritance? Or would I continue living in the bubble of ignorance? The questions swirled, dancing in the air around us, taunting me. I felt trapped, yet I could almost taste the liberation that honesty might bring. Then, just as I was about to speak, footsteps echoed down the hall. My heart lurched. My mother's voice broke the spell. Tom, dinner's ready. The sound was a lifeline. Yet a tidal wave of dread washed over me at the thought of facing the family I had always known. Would they see me differently? Would they be proud or ashamed? The room was suddenly too small, too overwhelming. Tom, Ava urged softly, as if sensing my internal battle. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. How could I unravel everything I thought I knew? The fear clawed at my throat. Could I truly own this? Could I stand against my family's legacy? The silence was thick with tension. I glanced at Ava, desperation in my eyes. The weight of the secret felt heavier than ever as I stood there, my chest tight with a mixture of fear and fury. The unsettling sound of the floor creaking underfoot reminded me that time was slipping away. I swallowed hard. Would I ever have the courage to face what lay beneath, to expose my own soul's darkness? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The dinner table took on an air of normalcy that felt almost cruel. The familiar sense of roasted chicken and seasoned vegetables wafted through the air. But the warmth was lost on me. I sat in my usual spot, the place where I had taken countless family meals, but instead of comfort, I felt an alien sensation creep over me, a reminder of the heavy burden of truth pressing against my chest. As my parents exchanged small talk, the sound of their voices felt distant, like whispers from another world. My mother's laugh rang out, chipper and bright, while my father recounted a story from work that had everyone chuckling. I smiled along, even as I grappled with the chaos swirling in my mind. They sat blissfully unaware of the storm I carried within, the secrets of our lineage clamoring for acknowledgement. Unable to join the light-hearted banter, I shifted uncomfortably in my chair, the cheapwood creaking beneath me. I could see Ava sitting across the table, her gaze constantly flicking back to me, concern pooling in her eyes. She always had a way of knowing when I was unraveling, and tonight was no exception. "Hey Tom," my father said, an easy smile gracing his face. "What's weighing on your mind? You've been quiet." His question hung in the air, and I felt the familiar prickling of anxiety clawing at my throat. Did he sense the shift in the atmosphere? Did he have any inkling of the dark undercurrents shaping our family legacy? I wanted to scream at him about the past that haunted me, but instead I forced a tight-lipped smile. "Just thinking about school," I lied, knowing it was a flimsy excuse. How could I even think of complaining about grades when so many bore the weight of real suffering? As the meal progressed, I found myself picking at the remnants on my plate. My appetite vanished in the shadow of guilt, and every bite felt like a betrayal. In that moment, the disconnect between my family's laughter and my spiraling thoughts grew unbearable. A few moments later, as dinner wound down, my mother excused herself to the kitchen to clear the table, leaving my father with a light-hearted jest hanging in the air. I felt a sudden wave of longing for connection, for the family narrative to shift back to joy and innocence, but I knew it wouldn't happen while I was tethered to my truth. "Can I talk to you after dinner?" I finally asked Ava, my voice barely above a whisper, awkwardly interrupting my father's story. Her eyes widened with surprise before a soft nod granted me permission, an acknowledgement that filled me with both hope and dread. I couldn't shake the sensation that I was teetering on the edge of a precipice. After dessert, a rich chocolate cake infused with hints of orange that used to be my favorite lured Ava into the dimly lit living room, the flickering light of the fireplace casting shadows that danced across the walls. Once we settled onto the couch, I searched for words, the air thick with anticipation and anxiety. "I found something, Ava. Something about my family, about me." The revelation hung in the space between us like a heavy fog, obscuring our clarity. Her expression shifted, displaying a mix of sympathy and curiosity. "What is it? You can tell me," she urged, her voice steady. I clenched my hands, the warm rush of vulnerability engulfing me. "I'm not who I thought I was. Our family's wealth comes from a history of oppression." Her eyes widened, absorbing my words one at a time, as if they were tangible fragments she could hold. "What do you mean?" I breathed deeply, gathering strength. "My great-grandfather made a fortune exploiting others. I never knew. We've all benefited from pain." I paused, biting back the rippling wave of emotion. "And I don't know how to reconcile that." For a moment silence fell between us, heavy and suffocating. Just when I thought the words had fallen flat, Ava reached for my hand, her warmth grounding me. "You have a choice, Tom. You don't have to carry that legacy. You can be different, you can fight against it." A flicker of hope surged within me, yet doubt rushed to extinguish it. "But how? How can I make a difference?" Before she could reply, a loud crash echoed from the other room, followed by muffled voices rising in agitation. The comfort of our confessional moment shattered, replaced by a sense of urgency. We exchanged glances, questions brewing in our eyes. I stood, my heart racing. What was that? As I moved toward the noise, dread curled in my stomach. Every step felt heavy with foreboding. I reached the doorway just in time to see my father's face twist in anger, an expression I had never witnessed before. "You don't understand. This is our legacy. You have no idea what it takes to maintain it." "What?" I froze, uncertainty clawing at me. What was happening? Ava stepped beside me, her face pale, mirroring my shock. Another voice, a familiar one, trembling with resentment, replied, "But at what cost, Dad? At whose expense?" Instinctively, I stepped forward, anxiety propelling me. As I entered the living room, the fragmented conversation sprang to life around me, vague yet electrifying, revealing layers of my family history I had yet to uncover. In that heartbeat, clarity flared, illuminating the path before me. Whatever lay ahead would require far more than just courage. It would demand confrontation, heartache, and perhaps the shattering of everything I thought I knew to be true. And just when I thought I might grasp the reality I had been seeking, A figure swirled through the doorway, their entrance completely unexpected. My heart dropped as recognition ignited a blaze of fear within me. "Tom," they said, their voice a low whisper filled with peril. "You have to hear this before it's too late." Anxiety coiled tight as I stood on the precipice, my family history spiraling dangerously out of control. I no longer had a choice. I had to face the truth, no matter what revelation awaited me. The room was heavy with unspoken truths, the air saturated by tension that seemed to pulse with every heartbeat. As I stood frozen in disbelief, the figure that had just walked in loomed darkly against the backdrop of flickering firelight. It took me a moment to recognize the face twisted in concern and desperation. It was Max, my estranged cousin, who had vanished from our family gatherings years ago. "Tom, you have to hear this before it's too late," he repeated, urgency lacing his tone as he tried to catch my attention. His disheveled hair and the deep shadows under his eyes told me he had been through something far more harrowing than my current turmoil, and I found myself drawn to the intensity of his plea. "Max, what are you doing here?" I finally managed to ask, my voice laced with confusion and urgency. "I had to come," he said, stepping further into the room, his eyes darting between my father and Ava, who stood beside mere silent anchors amid chaos. "It's about our family's connections, the ones you found out about. You're in danger if you don't listen." The crowd of family who had been laughing only moments before was replaced by a circus of silence, their expressions shifting from surprise to disbelief, and then to apprehensive acknowledgement. My father clenched his fists, tension radiating off him like waves of heat. "What are you talking about, Max? Don't you dare come here with your nonsense." "No nonsense," Max shot back, his voice rising with a passion I had yet to witness in him. "You all have been oblivious to the people you're hurting. I thought I could just turn away, but I can't watch you crush these lives anymore. It's killing me." I felt a rush of adrenaline mingled with the flickering embers of hope. What did he know? Were the compromises of our family's legacy such that I could finally break free from its suffocating hold? Max turned to me, desperation in his eyes. "Tom, I've heard whispers. There are people who won't stop until you pay a price for that wealth. You have to understand what's at stake. It isn't just a family story. It's a future." That my father surged forward, his simmering anger boiling over. "You need to leave," he commanded, his voice wrapped tightly around the authority he had always wielded like a shield. "This is our business, not yours to meddle with." But Max stood firm, shoulders squared, as if he were Nordman stone against my father's relentless tide. "You're losing him, Reginald. You're losing all of us. Can't you see that?" His words hung in the air, a fragile whisper pressing against the harsh reality of our inherited legacy. They echoed in my heart, a shout piercing through a veil of complicity. "I can't turn away anymore, Dad. Not after what I've learned, not when families are paying for our prosperity." In that moment I felt a rush of clarity cascading through me, sparking latent courage I didn't know I possessed. The weight of my lineage had felt like a shackle up until now, but perhaps it was time to unchain myself from it, despite the overwhelming dread coiling within. "I need to know," I said, my voice cutting through the fray. "All of it. Everything about our family's past, about the exploitation and pain." I turned to Ava, who looked torn between worry and the fierce support she always offered. "And am going to fight for what's right, even if it means tearing apart the very fabric of my identity." Just then my mother appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron, confusion etched deep across her face. "What's going on here?" she asked, sensing the shift in atmosphere. In that instant my father's fury broke free. "This is family business, Martha," he barked, rage clawing at his voice. "Stay out of it." My mother's brow furrowed, and with that frown came a subtle shift in her demeanor, a flicker of recognition that something deeper lay beneath the surface. "You're my son," she said, fear mingling with anger bubbling beneath her words. "I won't let you fall into madness because of some distorted version of our history. We can make it right." "Make what right, Mom?" I challenged, the fire in my gut threatening to consume me. "The pain of so many people washed away? That fine dining at this table comes at the expense of lives we choose to ignore?" Max eyed the room, his intensity still palpable as he stepped closer to me. "Tom, we have to put this into the open. If we start to unravel these threads, the truth will come out, but you have to be prepared for what that means." My heart raced as he spoke. Clarity and dread collided, leaving me teetering on the precipice of a decision. And then my world tilted once more. A new voice emerged, fragile yet commanding from the shadows, cutting through the tension. Tom, you need to know everything, the voice said, weighted with emotion. You're not just bound by what your family has done. You also have a decision to make about your future. I can't keep this hidden anymore. It's time you heard the truth about your own bloodline. Everyone turned in unison toward the source of the voice, shocked faces bearing witness to an impending storm. Anxiety surged again, coaxing the edges of my courage to fray as the meaning of those words settled like lead in my stomach. Standing at the threshold was someone I never expected to see, someone I had thought was lost. There, framed by the doorway, stood someone who changed everything. A distant relative whose existence had been carefully hidden, their presence threatening to unravel the very legacy I sought to dismantle. No, I whispered, heart racing as reality twisted and expanded into what felt like boundless chaos. You shouldn't be here. You can't be here. Beneath the firelight, their eyes bore into me with a mixture of camaraderie and regret. The kind of emotion that could either bolster my resolve or drown me in despair. I was now faced with the tangible weight of family bonds, and the unforeseen consequences of truth unraveling before me. This was no longer just my story, it was an expanse of shared histories, of pain, suffering, and redemption that threatened to swallow us whole. The air was thick with uncertainty, a tightening coil that seemed ready to snap, and all I could do was stare at the figure standing in the doorway. My heart raced as recognition washed over me. It was Claire, a name I hadn't heard in years, but one that echoed through whispered family conversations and veiled glances. Claire, I breathed, my voice barely escaping my lips. Her presence stirred memories of childhood summers, buried secrets of our families, and a truth I could barely comprehend. The room, once a cocoon of fierce emotions, morphed into a battleground of silence where shock held us captive. Tension wrapped around us like the smoke curling from the fire, thickening my breaths and forcing the words I struggled to articulate. What are you doing here? Claire stepped further into the room, her eyes sweeping over our gathered family, her gaze lingering on Max. I've come to speak my truth, she said, her voice steadier than I felt inside. And it's crucial that you all hear what I have to say. Max shifted, stepping closer to me, his arm brushing against mine, a silent pact of solidarity. I needed him now, the reminder of the surge of courage I felt only moments ago. I didn't know what she wanted to reveal, but the tremble in her hands suggested it was something monumentally important and frightening. Your family, Claire began, her voice cracking ever so slightly. For years, our families have been entwined in ways nobody wanted to acknowledge. There's a darkness that festers beneath the surface, Tom. A history of secrets that has taken countless lives. And you are caught in that web. The flames danced behind her, casting flickering shadows, and for a moment, I felt the world constrict, the very air stealing my breath. What do you mean? I managed, my heart hammering as understanding loomed over me like a thundercloud. There's a reason Max came to you, she continued, stepping closer, her gaze locking with mine, as if she could see through the layers of defenses I had built. You are not just a product of your family's wealth. You have inheritance that extends beyond material possessions. People are depending on you to undo what has been done. A shiver pulsed through me, igniting both fear and a fragile flicker of hope. What if all I've believed about my legacy is wrong? What if I can make it right? There are those, Claire hesitated, the weight of her words palpable. There are those who will fight you every step of the way. They thrive on the discrimination and suffering your family's prosperity has caused. I could feel my father's glare cutting through the air, a warning not to dig deeper, yet unease churned within me, gnawing at my conscience. What do you know? What have you been holding back? Claire took a deep breath, the raw expression in her eyes exposing a vulnerability that tethered me closer to her. I know about the land, the lives lost for profit. Our families have been inextricably linked through generations of exploitation, and I am part of that history. She gestured toward herself, her voice laden with an emotional weight that demanded attention. I was one of those who fought to survive in the shadows created by your last named. A shudder ran down my spine, a ripple of connection sparking between us. You, I gasped, fury and shame surfacing in the pit of my stomach. You're part of the pain? Not just me, she replied, tears shimmering in her gaze, but her strength was palpable, echoing in her words. People like me, along with their families, they suffered while others profited. It is that pain that you must carry forward if you choose to be the change. A wave of nausea enveloped me as the truth sank in, the implications flooding my senses. My family's legacy wasn't just wealth. It was bloodshed, a chain of suffering I had never once grasped before. Conflicted, I turned toward my father, who stood rigid, a tyrant crumbling under the weight of exposed truths that reeked of guilt. I can't turn a blind eye to this anymore, I declared, my voice rising, each word resonating with purpose. I refuse to be a part of this horrific cycle. You cannot silence me. The tension in the room escalated, but even amid the escalating battle of wills, I felt an ember of determination ignite within me. I had to stand for those who had been stifled, who had suffered in silence while we reveled in comfort. Then, almost as if summoned by my emotional outburst, a new voice cut through the chaos, a soft, trembling sound, yet weighted with promise. Tom, wait. Before you confront your father, know that some alliances run deeper than you think, and not all of them are bad. I turned toward Ava, her face flushing with urgency. What are you talking about? There are still people in your family who want to right the wrongs, she urged, her eyes wide with meaning. Not everything is as it seems. Before I could respond, Claire reached for me, her hands clasping around mine. If you truly want to fight, you will need allies. Don't rush into this blindly. There are layers upon layers to uncover. As Claire's grip tightened, a deafening silence enveloped us, one filled with promises and impending choices. I glanced around the room filled with trepidation and newfound resolve, bloodlines entwined in a messy quilt of brokenness and potential redemption. And just as I settled on the weight of a resolute path, a chilling crack of thunder resonated from outside, prompting the lights to flicker ominously. The precarious nature of our family's legacy hung heavy in the air, drawing me into the dizzying current of possibility and peril. Before I could process the implications, I spotted a flicker of movement from my father, an expression crossing his face that felt like a warning. Athena phone buzzed on the table, shattering the moment of cautious resolve. Tom, he said, his voice icy, I hope you're prepared for the consequences of your decision. We're not the only ones who've been watching. I felt my heart seize at the sudden weight of this threat, realization dawning heavy upon me. Whatever path I chose, my family's legacy of discrimination and pain was about to bring forth unexpected challenges, foes I hadn't yet imagined, and allies hiding in the shadows. My world was expanding into darkness, an unfathomable mystery that left me trembling at the edge, teetering with the enormity of the truth. It was time to prepare for a fight that could reshape everything I thought I understood about family, legacy, and justice. The days following Claire's revelation passed in a blur, a disorienting mix of dread and reluctant resolve. As much as I yearned to act, every corner I turned seemed shrouded in lingering uncertainty. My family's estate felt like a gilded cage, one that echoed with the whispers of past injustices and battles far beyond my comprehension. I often caught myself staring out the window, the horizon taunting me with possibilities I couldn't yet grasp. Max was by my side, his unwavering support buoying my spirits, yet I could sense the tension growing between us. He had his own history to contend with, a history that intertwined with mine in ways I could barely begin to fathom. You know you can count on me, right? He'd often say, his eyes searching mine for reassurance. Whatever we find, we'll figure it out together. But what if it's too much? I'd respond, lean into the uncertainty. This isn't just about us, Max. It's about everything, everyone. And he would nod, his expression stoic, yet I could see the storm of emotions swirling just beneath the surface. Neither of us had grasped the totality of the conflict looming ahead. It was on a particularly dreary afternoon that Ava reached out to me, her tone laced with urgency. Tom, I need to talk to you. It's about the family's past, and it's important. I met her at a small cafe, the scent of coffee enveloping us in warmth as rain drummed against the windows. The flickering candle on our table blinked like a heartbeat, each flicker resonating with the tension building inside of me. What is it? Has something changed? I asked, the words tumbling out, betraying my desperation for clarity. She looked around the cafe before settling her gaze on me, apprehension clouding her expression. There are fragments of our family's history, people who've suffered, voices unheard. I stumbled upon some documents, poorly kept, but they tell a story, Tom. A narrative not just of loss but of resistance. I leaned in closer, heart racing. What kind of resistance? What do they say? Ava hesitated. It's convoluted. There are names, dates, all tied to the land our families share. And it's not a pretty picture. But it's also a picture of reconciliation. Some of the former laborers banded together to fight back, to reclaim their rights. Their descendants are still around. You could reach out and connect with them, acknowledge their pain. Be part of the healing process. But even as she spoke, I sensed a shadow looming over our conversation. A weight that bore into my chest. And do you think my family will let me? They've thrived on the shadows of oppression for so long. They'll never allow it. Ava reached for my hand, grounding me for a moment. Sometimes you have to challenge what's been set before you, face the beast directly, she urged, her eyes glinting with resolve. You have the power to make a difference, Tom. I drew a deep breath, the enormity of her words tangling with my emotions. But I'm still just one person, I protested weakly, the doubt creeping back in. This feels overwhelming. Ava's grip was firm, an anchor in the swirling currents of uncertainty. You're not alone. You have people who care, who want to help you right the wrongs of the past. Our conversation was abruptly interrupted by the piercing ring of my phone, jarring me from my thoughts. I glanced at the screen and saw Claire's name lit up. My pulse spiked. I answered with quiet anticipation. Tom. Her voice came through, laced with urgency. We need to meet. Now. The tension in her voice put me on edge. What happened? Is it about my family? There's been a development, a very concerning one. Meet me at the old church by the river. Please come alone. The line went dead before I could respond, and dread coiled in my stomach. My heart raced as I shared the news with Ava. I need to go, I said, worry lacing my tone. Be careful, Tom, she cautioned, her voice thick with concern. This could be a trap. I nodded, and after a brief pause, she squeezed my hand one last time before I left, the warmth grounding me even as doubt echoed in my mind. The walk to the church felt interminable, the weight of my family's legacy pressing down on my shoulders, ghostly figures whispering through the trees, warning me of the past that refused to be buried. I could picture Claire waiting, her expression a veil of uncertainty shrouded in fierce determination as I approached the old church, its crumbling stone facade looming ahead. I was struck by the absurd beauty of its decay. The walls bore the marks of time, a fitting reminder of the history that must be faced if I hoped to reclaim my own identity. Claire stood outside, her figure silhouetted against the fading light. Thanks for coming, she said, her voice breathless. You have to listen closely. Lives are at stake, yours included. Before I could process her words, a low rumble interrupted the stillness, and I felt the ground tremor beneath my feet. The earth itself felt charged with an unsettling energy. What do you mean? I pressed, unease twisting in my gut. A sudden crack appeared in the earth nearby, and Claire's face went pale. They're closer than you think. You must be prepared, Tom. There are people who will stop at nothing to protect their interests, including your family. My pulse quickened, fear merging with adrenaline. What do you know? She took a step back and I sensed panic clawing at her. I can show you who they are, but it won't be easy. You'll have to confront them, make a choice that may change everything. And even then, the truth might destroy you. As her words sank in, I became acutely aware of my father's shadow looming just beyond the threshold of this momentum, impending confrontation that felt inevitable. I could hear his whispered admonitions echoing in my mind, but his voice faded, replaced by the drum of my own heartbeat reverberating with the knowledge that I could no longer retreat. You can't silence me, I declared, the weight of my decision hanging heavy in the air. But what happens now? As if in reply, the ground trembled again, sending a chill of foreboding racing down my spine. I shot a glance at Claire, our fate intertwined as we stood at the precipice of a truth buried for far too long. The question loomed between us like the weight of the past threatening to swallow us whole. What would it take to truly break free from the chains of our legacy? Before I had time to comprehend it, I heard a voice. I didn't recognize it at first, but it rang clear through the chaos surrounding me. Tom. I turned, an icy wave of fear chasing me. It was a face I hadn't expected to see. It was Ava, standing at the edge of the churchyard, eyes wide and desperate. Tom, you need to know there's something else. Something that changes everything. And in that moment the world shifted again, the ground beneath us trembling in response to a truth yet to be unveiled. A revelation that could tear apart everything I thought I knew. The urgency in Ava's voice sank like a stone in my gut. I could hardly process the weight of what she was suggesting, nor the implications it might have on everything I had come to believe about my family, about my place in this convoluted history. The air felt heavy, pressing down on me as I stood between two women who held pieces of a puzzle that could unveil a picture I was not yet ready to see. "Tom, please," Ava implored, taking a few determined steps toward me. "You don't understand the full scope of what's happening." "Then help me understand." I shot back, frustration building as uncertainty gnawed at me from the inside out. I was already standing on the edge of a chasm, and now I felt as if the ground was crumbling beneath my feet. Claire's eyes darted between us, her expression caught somewhere between confusion and fear. "This isn't the time for secrets, Ava. If you have something to say, say it now." Ava took a deep breath, her gaze resolute. "I learned about a hidden ledger from a family member, a long-lost relative, who documented the agreements between our families. Your family was not just complicit in the suffering, they directly profited from it. It didn't end with the past. It's been a continuous cycle." The cold wave washed over me, and I felt my heart stutter. "What do you mean? I don't understand." She took another step forward, then hesitated, gauging my reaction. "You're tied to it, Tom. Your name is on documents. Our families, they charted the very conditions that led to exploitation. I thought I was searching for evidence of mistreatment, but instead I uncovered a legacy of privilege that has been built on the backs of others. And oh, it can't be," I stammered, gripping the edges of the old stone wall for support. "Can't be true. I would never," Ava pressed on, her voice steady despite the enormity of what she was saying. "But it is true. And you have a chance, perhaps the only chance, to address these wrongs. But it starts with you owning the truth of your own history." Claire's eyes softened as she regarded me, sensing my turmoil. "Tom, you're not responsible for what your ancestors did. But you can take a stand and write a new narrative. Don't allow fear to defeat you before you've begun." As her words settled in, I felt a flicker of what could be glimmer of hope woven through the despair. "But what does that mean? How do I even start?" Ava stepped closer, determination lighting her face. "You must reach out to the descendants of those who were hurt. Show them that their voices matter. Let them see that you're willing to be the catalyst for change, even if it means facing the fury of your own family." Something deep within me stirred. It was a tentative thread of resolve, but with it came a new fear. What if my efforts turned my family against me? Could I withstand the wrath of generations built on denial and pride? "I don't know if I can do this," I admitted quietly, feeling small amidst the echoes of the past. "You can," Claire reassured, her hand reaching out to touch my arm. "You won't be alone. We'll stand by you." As much as I longed for support, a part of me wanted to turn away, to escape to a time when my biggest concern was the trivial weight of familial expectation. But there was no turning back now. It was as if the very earth beneath me had been wrenched open, exposing the raw ugliness of our shared history I could no longer ignore. Just then the atmosphere shifted. A foreboding wind swept through the churchyard, rustling the leaves and carrying whispers that felt like warnings. I glanced back at Ava, her expression now a melange of concern and urgency. "Tom, it's not safe here. We need to go." "How do you know that?" I asked, feeling the prickling sensation of being watched, a surging intuition that someone or something was lurking nearby. "Because I followed someone," she admitted, casting a quick glance over her shoulder. "I saw them watching you from the shadows. If they know you're at this church, they might already be on their way." Adrenaline shot through me, and my fight-or-flight instincts kicked in. "Who are they?" "The ones your family has always protected. The ones who believe that the past should stay buried. And they will do anything to keep it that way." My blood ran cold. "We need to leave." "But where?" Claire asked, panic threading her tone. "If they know we're here, we can't go back to the estate. There's a Cabamy family's old property in the woods." Ava interjected, her voice a mix of desperation and determination. "It's secluded. We can hold up there until we get a better sense of what's going on. Then let's go," I urged, feeling the clock ticking. My heart raced as we hurried back toward the path I had come to the church on, an unease settling deep in my bones. As we hurried through the shadows, my mind raced with questions, fears that clawed at me. Could I truly confront what lay ahead? Could I dismantle a legacy of silence and shame steeped in my bloodline? And then as we reached the edge of the woods, I felt it again. That sensation of being watched, a chilling presence lurking just out of sight. A sense of danger wrapped around us like a shroud. And in that moment, I feared that the truth wouldn't just uncover the hidden wounds of my family. It might expose the secrets that would threaten not just our resolve, but perhaps our lives. Just as we entered the cover of trees, a sound stopped us dead in our tracks, branches snapping, footsteps approaching. A figure emerged from the darkness, and my heart sank as I recognized them. It was someone I never expected to see, the last person I thought would come between my path to redemption. The weight of betrayal hung heavy in the air as the figure called my name, and I shuddered at the incredibility of it all. A chill coursed through me, more potent than the cool air of the forest. I struggled to reconcile what I saw with the person I thought I knew, the one who had always stood by my side, urging me to embrace change. Tom? The voice that broke through the darkness was a haunting melody, familiar yet laced with an undercurrent of danger. I turned slowly, fear and confusion warring within me. Andy, I breathed, the name spilling from my lips, a mixture of disbelief and urgency. My childhood friend stood before me, bathed in the silver light of a waning moon, his expression unreadable, shadowed, and deep with hidden meaning as he stepped forward, pushing aside branches like barriers that fell before him. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, as if saying it too loudly would shatter the moment. Ava and Claire hung back, exchanged glances that spoke of recognition, worry, perhaps even the beginning of a plan. Andy's presence felt like the eye of a storm, a calm that belied the chaos swirling around us. "I came to warn you," he said, his voice strained but earnest. "About your family. About what you've uncovered. What do you know?" My urgency bubbled to the surface as an impulse to trust him wrestled against the fog of betrayal. He ran a hand through his tousled hair. "I've been watching from afar," he continued, urgent. "I know you want to make things right, but you're deeper in it than you realize. It's not just about your family. It's about the power they wield. You're poking a bear, one that's been dormant for too long. Something heavy hung unmentioned between us, the gravity of unspoken truths. The burden of loyalty weighed against moral reckoning. You never said anything before," I accused, anger and hurt tightening around my throat. "You could have warned me that I had to gather enough proof to be sure," he replied, his eyes pleading for understanding. "But it's worse than you think, Tom. Your family isn't just hiding their past. They're actively working to preserve their future. If they feel threatened, they will strike back. We can't afford to underestimate them." A sense of despair unfurled within me. The very core of the mission I had committed to was now bathed in doubt. What if rising to confront my family's legacy meant more than I anticipated? "But I still have to try," I said, my conviction steeped in fear. "I can't simply let this slip back into the shadows." Ava stepped forward, her hand resting on my shoulder, a silent plea for unity in this disorienting moment. "Tom, we're all in this together," she urged, her gaze locked onto mine. "We have to stand firm. But we also need a strategy." Andy's expression shifted, something darker, something hidden flickered in the back of his eyes. "Maybe there's a way to pull the rug out from under them. But it'll take more than just us. Takes allies." Claire crossed her arms, the tension palpable. "What do you mean?" "There are other families who've suffered, descendants who might not know your family's involvement, who wouldn't hesitate to expose the truth," he explained. "But they live with fear, and your family ensures that silence remains strong." "Then let's reach out," I suggested, emboldened by a flicker of agency. "Let's find them." "You'll need proof, Tom," Andy cautioned, shaking his head. "Written testimony, corroboration. You can't proceed without it." The cracks in my resolve deepened as the enormity of the task settled over me. "And if I fail?" "We have to believe you won't," Ava said firmly. "We can't afford to lose this chance." As we began to plan, the shadows seemed to lean closer, whispering threats laced in deceit. My heart raced, my mind spun with consequences. If I opened the door to these new allies, would my own family retaliate harder? Would fear pull me back into the embrace of ignorance? Just then a sharp crack resounded from behind, and instinctively we turned. A rustling intensified, almost in rhythm with the thundering beat of my heart. I felt bile rise, sensing that whatever was looming around us had come closer. "Tom," Andy whispered urgently. "I think they're here." In that instant everything fell into place, the fragmented truths that had emerged, the weight of family secrets, the dire urgency of the moment. My veins pulsed with fear and an inkling of determination. But just as clarity began to settle, a scream split the air, a sharp, piercing cry that sent shivers down my spine. A figure burst through the brush, illuminated briefly by a wayward beam of moonlight. A face twisted in fear, desperation etched in features I recognized but couldn't comprehend. It was someone I had never expected, someone whose voice echoed reminders of innocence long since lost. "Tom!" the figure gasped, panic-stricken. "They're coming for us. We need to run." The gravity of the situation crushed my chest, drowning out reason. Everything I had stood for was on the verge of collapse, swept away as uncertainty loomed dark as the night sky. And as the stark reality of the world around me blurred with fear, I knew the stakes had suddenly turned perilously higher. We weren't just unraveling the past. We were racing against time, and the past was far from the only enemy we had to face. The moon hung high, cloaked in shadows that twisted around us like an unseen predator, its silver light flickering nervously as though it, too, sensed the encroaching danger. My heart raced as I caught sight of the figure who had burst through the underbrush, lungs heaving and eyes wide with fear, reflected in a sheen of moonlight that shone almost ghastly against the creeping darkness. "Lily!" I shouted, instinctually reaching for her trembling shoulders. She was a ghost from my past, a fleeting memory I hadn't thought about in years. How had she gotten here, caught in the midst of this overwhelming storm? "Tom, please." Her voice wavered, barely hanging on to composure. "They're after me. They know I've been asking questions about you, about your family." Like ice shards, her words pierced my heart. The silhouettes of my past, now shrouded in the echoes of camaraderie and innocence, began shattering beneath the weight of this new reality. "Why are you here, Lily? How did you find me?" "I had to come. I didn't know if I could trust anyone else." Her eyes darted toward the tree line as if the shadows themselves were listening. "But I must warn you, Tom. Every question I asked unlocked a new danger. Your family is dangerous. If they think you're digging into their secrets, they won't hesitate to silence anyone." The fear that clutched my heart twisted tighter, flooding through me with an urgency that commanded attention. I had often feared what secrets my family may hold, but hearing them bear weight in someone else's distress made those fears palpable. Lily's voice lingered in the air like smoke. I felt suffocated, trapped in a home built on lies. Ava and Claire exchanged alarmed looks. "Tom," Claire said, stepping closer, "we should get out of here. If they're coming for her, they'll be coming for us too. We can't afford to be caught. We need to regroup and think." "No," I insisted, desperation clawing at my throat. "They've already taken so much from me. I can't turn my back on someone I care about just because I'm scared. We can't run forever. I have to confront them to find out what they really want." Lily shook her head vehemently. "You don't understand. There are forces at play here you can't comprehend. This isn't just about you or your family. There are lives at stake, people who have disappeared because of them. I've seen it. I can't let you walk into that danger. We're in this together," I replied, my voice trembling. "I can't let them intimidate me. And I won't let them intimidate you either." Just as I thought I had gathered the resolve to take the next step, I felt a shiver roll down my spine, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. The air thickened, swirling with the tension of unknowing. I could feel it enveloping my friends and me. Something was slipping, a tightrope stretched too thin. "We should leave now," Andy said sternly, scanning the gloom surrounding us. The weight of his urgency cracked the fragile resolve I had tried to foster. "Go to my house." Lily suddenly spoke up, her voice shaking but resolute. "There's a basement. I can hide the four of you. I know some things. I need to tell you." A silent agreement passed among us. The looming shadows threatening from beyond were no longer just the whispers of my past. They were real, tangible threats, and the weight of our shared concern began to coalesce into a shared mission born of fear, loyalty, and the faintest flicker of hope. As we turned to move, a rustling noise erupted from the nearby thicket, loud and intrusive, stirring the stillness of the night into chaos. We all froze, every muscle tensed, breath hitching as we glanced back at the darkness that blanketed the forest floor. Out stepped a figure I had not anticipated, someone I would have never thought could emerge from the pool of shadows. Desperation mingled with astonishment as I stared into familiar eyes, marked distinctly by knowing. Those eyes belonged to my brother Mark. "Tom," he breathed, his voice laced with deep sorrow. "I'm so sorry I didn't tell you. I had no choice. But they know. They're on to you. Please, you have to trust me. The fragments of this moment shattered my thoughts like glass. A part of me wanted to believe him, to welcome him back despite all that had come between us. But another part reminded me of the betrayal that had severed our bond. Why now? I found myself challenging every instinct, screaming to hear him out. There's no time. They're coming for all of us, he urged, desperation coloring his words. I was trying to protect you. There's too much at stake. And there's something you don't know about our family, something you need to find out. With Mark standing there, the delicate web of trust one had been weaving with the others began to fray. Hope tinged with fear blossomed in the chaos of my heart. Would this turn the tide? Or would it unravel everything I had hoped to build? His revelation hung thick in the air, another layer of betrayal looming like a shadow over me, simmering with the potential to change everything. And as the first echoes of movement broke through the forest, I felt the walls closing in. Tom, Lily shouted, breaking me from my thoughts, urgency crackling in her voice. We need to move. Now. Together, with shadows on our heels and questions swirling in the dark, we turned and ran, propelled by a mix of peril and the desperate hope that soon, perhaps, we could finally understand the truth that had eluded us for far too long. But as we fled, I knew with visceral clarity that the answers we sought could bring salvation or plunge us deeper into darkness. The forest loomed around us, an embrace of despair and uncertainty. Each rustle of leaves and snapping twig felt like a heartbeat, a reminder of the inexorable dread pursuing us through the night. I ran alongside Lily, Claire, Ava, and Andy, but Mark's presence unnerved me in ways I couldn't articulate. He had always been fiercely protective, yet there was a hollowness in his eyes that mirrored the uncertainty clenching my heart. As we neared Lily's house, a flicker of light danced in the distance. The faint glow spilled from the windows, a beacon amid the darkness. I couldn't help but hope it represented safety. But as I glanced back at Mark, my heart sank. Hope was a fragile thing, easily shattered by betrayal. Why didn't you warn me about any of this, Mark? I whispered harshly as we rounded a curve in the dirt path leading to the house. You've known for so long. And now it feels like I don't even know who you are, that I was protecting you. He retorted, urgency lacing his words. You have to understand. If I had told you, you would have been in the crosshairs long before you even knew what was happening. I didn't want them to find you. But now it feels like I can't trust anyone. I interrupted, my throat tight. Not my brother, not my family, and certainly not any of the secrets you seem ready to drag out into the light. Tom, Mark's voice broke, and the weight of his past decisions hung heavily between us. I didn't want to acknowledge the flicker of pain in his eyes, the vulnerability beneath his bravado. You're still my brother. We can heal from this. If we make it through tonight. Before I could respond, Lily suddenly stopped at the edge of her property, her voice sharp as glass. Here. Quickly. She ushered us toward the back of the house. The fear in her eyes warned of danger lurking at our heels as we crammed ourselves into the hidden basement. The scent of earth mingled with dampness, swallowing us in shadow. We huddled together, heartbeats synchronized in a rhythm of dread. The oppressive silence made my skin prickle, my breath hitching as I waited for the inevitable sound of our pursuers. Lily lit a small lantern, the flickering light casting shadows on the custom-made shelves filled with odd knickknacks. I've been gathering information, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. There are things I've uncovered you won't believe. The truth about your family and about the people who are after us. Mark shifted uncomfortably, his gaze darting between us. We don't have much time. We need to know if we can trust each other. I can explain what I've been involved in, everything I did to protect you. A protection that nearly led me to destruction. I shot back, the heat of anger burning in my chest. I hated feeling torn, to want to forgive him yet clash against the bitterness simmering beneath. What could you possibly have been protecting me from? From the truth, Mark yelled, breaking the tension. The truth about our father, and the many lives he destroyed to keep his legacy untarnished. The room vibrated with that revelation, the air thickening around us. My father's legacy? What had he done? A lump formed in my throat as disbelief coiled tightly. What are you talking about? People have gone missing, Tom. You've seen the flyers. It's connected. Your father has ties to an underbelly of crime. Those disappearing had a hand in it. He did everything to keep it quiet. Mark's face flushed with anguish, revealing a man deeply torn. And there are whispers that it's only just beginning. An icy breath rushed through me at those words. The shattering reality of my father's choices enduring in the lives of others weighed heavily on my spirit. "You're lying," I stated, but my tone lacked conviction, the very fibers of my world unraveling at the edges. Ava's hand found mine, offering warmth against the encroaching dread. "Tom, we need to know if it's true. We need to uncover all the details." "Uncover what?" I practically shouted. "The truth? That's not as simple as you think. What if it lands us in even more danger?" Lily leaned closer, her eyes fierce. "If we stay silent then, we've already lost. We need to know what we're dealing with." There was a glimmer of conviction in her words, igniting a tiny spark in the oppressive shadow. But even as I grappled with our ominous reality, the echoes from the forest began creeping closer, footsteps, harsh whispers, and a rustle of leaves announcing the return of those pursuing us. Mark met my gaze, unwavering, his emotions laid bare as he gripped my shoulders. "I promise this isn't over. We fight together." The moment stretched, our breaths mingling with uncertainty. Time slipped away like grains of sand, and just as I thought we could forge a plan, the door at the top of the staircase burst open, revealing a silhouette all too familiar. The figure radiated malice, and I recognized him instantly, the spark of recognition igniting a fire of visceral fear that coursed through my veins. It was him. It was my father. "Tom," he sneered, the chilling familiarity making my heart seize. "You've strayed too far. And now you must face the consequences." With those words echoing through the dim confines of the basement, I realized I was standing at the edge of an abyss, teetering between the truth and the darkness that awaited below. None of us would escape unscathed. I stood at the precipice of my family's legacy, the weight of years spent in search of understanding crashing against the tumultuous waves of fear. My father loomed above me, the darkness in his eyes eclipsing the space we once shared. I could feel his disappointment looming heavy like a storm cloud, but beneath that, I sensed something deeper, an anger born of years spent protecting lies that rippled through the tapestry of our family history. "Consequences?" I challenged, every inch of my being screaming to confront him. "Is that why you've allowed so many to suffer? Is that the legacy you're so proud of?" The air crackled with tension, and for a moment, I thought he might hesitate, that he might see just how deeply the weight of our decisions impacted not just us, but also those who quietly bore the scars of our heritage. "Don't speak to me that way, Tom," he hissed, taking a step forward, his presence suffocating. "You think you can just dismantle our legacy with your naive beliefs? You have no idea the danger you're in. No idea what you're meddling with." "Danger? From who? From you?" I shot back, anger sparking in the cool recesses of the basement. "I can't keep the silent history of oppression hidden. I won't bury my head in the sand to protect a monster." Lily's grip on my hand tightened, grounding me in the moment, reminding me we were in this together. But even as my heart surged with defiance, I could feel the shadows of doubt castle over me, the raw truth of my father's actions ripping apart the fragile sanity I'd constructed from years of denial. "Tom, you've crossed a line. You think you can stand against our family's interests?" My father sneered, his voice low and chilling. An echo of realization surged within me, unfurling the question I had tried to ignore: how deeply ingrained this darkness ran. "I'm not fighting your interests. I'm trying to stand for those who don't have a voice. If that threatens you, then perhaps you should have thought of that before you chose this path." In that moment, I realized that I was standing not just against him, but against generations of silencia, feeble rebellion that no longer felt so fragile. The secret of our past wrapped itself around my spirit like a noose, pulling taut, but a newfound resolve blossomed through the fear. I had allies now: Lily, Ava, Claire, and even Max, who stood close, solidarity embedded within their very essence. "Maybe it's time you see what your legacy really means, Father," I declared, my voice rising above the oppressive air. "You've hidden for far too long. But there are people out there who deserve the truth. I will reach out to them and I will expose everything." His eyes darkened, rage boiling behind a veneer of control. "You think you can do this? You have no idea the forces you're provoking." "Maybe not," I admitted, "but I'm tired of living within your shadow. I will not let your fear dictate the future." Silence enveloped us, the quiet stretching impossibly thin as I sensed the impending storm. I turned toward the others, their fierce gazes lending me strength. We stand together, no matter what comes next. But just as I thought I had solidified my resolve, the oppressive air shifted. The basement door slammed shut behind me, trapping us in a claustrophobic space thick with palpable tension. "They're here," Mark whispered, his face pale beside me as he pressed closer. "Who?" I asked, adrenaline surging through my veins, each heartbeat whispering danger was looming just outside this sanctuary. "Those he's aligned with, those who've enforced silence for generations," Mark said. "They'll do whatever it takes to protect our family's legacy." And then footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. They echoed up the stairs, each crack reverberating through my chest like a drum warning of impending chaos. My father exchanged a glance with me, something unspoken flickering. The gnawing fear of loss mingled with the fire that ignited within me, creating a storm of ambiguous emotions. The door at the top of the stairs creaked open, and the unmistakable figure of one of my father's associates came into view, a sly smirk playing at the corners of his lips. It was Jonathan, the very harbinger of dread I'd both feared and loathed. "Well, well," he said, his tone soaking in cynicism, "looks like the prodigal son has finally come to play house." "Get out!" my father barked, his authority trembling with the weight of his own fear. "You shouldn't be here." "I'd watch your tone, Reginald," Jonathan replied, his eyes narrowing. "You're treading on thin ice. The past has a way of creeping back, especially when people start to poke around." "Leave us," I commanded, stepping forward, defiance lifting my chin higher. Whatever hesitance had once chained me to my family's legacy disappeared in the face of this revelation. "I'm done hiding," Jonathan laughed, the sound echoing like thunder through the confined space. "Oh, but you have no idea what you're inviting in, Tom. You're stepping into a world you don't understand." But it was too late. A tide of bravery surged as I pressed on. "Maybe you'll finally learn what it means to face consequences." And Thina silence followed, a breath caught in a collective gasp. Lily tightened her grip over my hand as Jonathan's sinister smile faded into something more tempestuous. "If it's a war you want, then a war you'll have." With that, a storm erupted. The basement became a cacophony of shouting and chaos, the shadows dancing frantically as Jonathan's threats tore through the air. Amidst the chaos, I reached out, grabbing onto my allies as we fought to shield one another from the unpredictable storm that threatened to swallow us whole. But in that wild chaos, something shifted inside of me, an unshackling of fears and uncertainties. I understood that the truth of my family's past would not come gently but would rip through the facade, and in that stark reality lay my only chance of freedom. As the tempest swirled around us, I straightened my posture, resolve burning fiercely in my chest. I would confront my family's legacy head-on. I would write the narrative anew, dismantling the oppressive echoes that had dictated our lives for far too long. With every ounce of clarity, I reached a profound understanding. The power of redemption lay not in simply uncovering the truth but in making peace with the weight of the past to create a future for those who had long been silenced. We climbed through the chaos together, bound with silent promises, hearts racing against the dark lull of secrets unspooling before us. Whatever awaited us on the other side, we were prepared to embrace the tumult and break the chain, letting our voices ring clear and unbridled within the storm. So as Jonathan's threats deepened, as my father's desperate pleas ricocheted around us, I spoke the words that would echo through the chambers of our legacy, through the generations burdened by despair. No more silence, and with that resolute declaration, the shadows trembled, the flickering light within me grew, prepared to confront whatever awaited outside our cocoon of truth. Because in that moment, as our voices united, a flicker of hope ignited in the darkness, one that whispered of redemption and forgiveness, of forging new paths in the wake of pain. The future was unfurling before us, each heartbeat mapping the territory of change as we stood firm in our silence filled with promise. It was a leap into the unknown, but together, we would create a new legacy done not in shadows but in the radiant light of truth, compassion, and connection. Because in the end, love and the courage to fight for it was always the most powerful weapon we'd wield. Even in the face of chaos, it was the only legacy that mattered now. And as I faced the daunting horizon, each breath steady, I knew we would prevail, that amidst the darkness of oppression, there shone a light that would not be extinguished.